to stay.
Hello and welcome back to Beyond Boards, a podcast dedicated to the actions and interests of skaters beyond skateboarding. My guest today, Joel Curtis, grew up and started skating in Sheffield, England. In the early 2000s, Joel turned pro for Landscape Skateboards and had the first part in their iconic full-length video Portraits. In 2009, Joel moved to Bath in the southeast of England, was a young dad, had been struggling with injuries for a while, and therefore decided to retire from pro skateboarding. In the following years, he dedicated his time and energy to music projects for various brands and organizations in and out of the skateboarding industry. In 2021, Joel started the Skate Creative podcast, in which he talks to creative people about how skateboarding has influenced their work creativity and life experience. He's recorded over 30 episodes so far with amazing guests from the UK skateboarding scene of the last 40 years. So here's my conversation with Joel. I hope you'll enjoy it. I usually start the same way with every guest and, talk about how he or she started skating. And so I was wondering, I know that you lived in Sheffield for a long time.
Yeah.
But now you've been living in Bath in the southwest of England for
That's correct,
quite a long time as well. But were you born in Sheffield?
Born in Sheffield, yeah. So that's where I'm from.
And so that's where you started skating then?
That's where I started skating, yeah, definitely. And me and I've got an older brother, Seth.
Yes.
We both started skating around the same time.
How much older than you is he?
He's only 18 months older than me, so yeah,
okay.
not,
So
not very
close.
much. Yeah, real close together in age. And we started off riding kind of BMX bikes and stuff like that. And we had our house. We were really lucky; it backed onto a park basically. So we used to do kind of like jumps on our bikes and things like that, and stupid stuff. And then I've got an older half brother as well, who's 10 years older than Seth. So yeah, he's 55 now, I think. Yeah, something like that. But he gave us one old kind of 70s board, had black wheels and was real skinny, and we kind of messed around on that for a bit. And
so how old were you when that happened, when you're your very first initiation to skating?
Probably 7, something like that. Yeah, pretty early. Maybe Seth was a little bit older, and that was something we just kind of, butt boarded up, and there was a path in the park up just above our house, and yeah, we'd just go down that hill and stuff and mess about. And
so that's mid-80s around there?
Yeah, probably. I was born 78, so yeah, probably mid-80s, probably 84, 85, something like that. And then obviously 85, well actually 86 is kind of the landmark year for a lot of people of my generation.
Yeah, Back to the Future.
Back to the Future came out in 86.
Right. Yeah.
And we saw that, I think. But it's weird, it's I can't even remember, it's so weird how culture worked back then, because there was so much stuff which was, we went to the cinema sometimes, but it wasn't every day or this or that. But,
sure.
And then you kind of, your memory gets mixed up. Did you wait till it came out on VHS, which was probably 2 years or something? But no, I think we definitely went to see it once at the cinema, and it was just the best thing ever.
Mind-blowing.
It's funny when you look at it now, because skateboarding is such a tiny part of that film.
It is, yeah.
But I don't know how come that has such a massive impact on so many people, but yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, doing that, and then kind of, the standard, going from that to a kind of supermarket board, plastic copers and all that kind of stuff. And I think I got my first proper board for, I think, my 10th birthday in 88, I think was...
Do you remember what board it was, or...?
Yeah, Santa Cruz Jeff Kendall with the graffiti spray thing.
Okay,
which was
nice.
Amazing, yeah. Yeah, really good.
Do you remember also your first video, proper skate video, and maybe the first magazine you saw? Do you remember those?
Yeah, I think, Seth started getting, there was a magazine called BMX Action Bike, which was basically a BMX magazine which ran for a long time, but that kind of morphed into what was RAD magazine, Rad magazine.
Oh, okay.
So that in about, I think that was maybe 88, 89, that kind of turned into kind of BMXing and skateboarding, and a bit of there used to be these kind of BMX scooters. Do you ever remember those?
Not really.
So if you imagine a big scooter with mag wheels on it, basically.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Wow.
That was kind of a thing for a minute in the late
okay.
80s. So they kind of covered up, but then it kind of went over to being rad, basically.
Okay, interesting.
So that was the first magazine we saw were those, because BMX Action Bike covered skateboarding a little bit, then it moved predominantly on skateboarding and became rad.
Mm-hmm.
But the first video, there was a guy who lived up the road from us who was I think he must have been 6, 7 years older than us, and I think his dad worked in America, so we'd see him all the time. He had a kind of, the Tony Hawk McSqueeb haircut, and he had Vans and stuff his dad would buy him when he was in America and come back, and he was he was amazing, that guy. guy. And like, but he lent us, I think it was Future Primitive, I think the Power video, and that was probably pretty old by then. And I don't think we had, my dad was an art lecturer at the college, and we didn't even have like a VHS player. So he had to buy, he borrowed one, like one of those big top loader ones. He used to like rent it out from work and bring it home for a few days, and we'd get that and we'd watch it.
Yeah, amazing.
That was about it, yeah. And then I think like first proper like video I saw regular, I think it was Public Domain, which was maybe 88. We used to go down to the skate shop and watch that, but yeah.
I'm changing gears a little bit, but I was just interested in knowing like when your interest for music started. So you started skating around that time, like mid-80s, around 7 years old. I read in an interview you did that you started playing guitar and the piano a bit, like around 10, 11 years old.
Yeah.
So I was wondering like how did that interest begin aside from skating, and like how much time would you dedicate to kind of both things?
They were both kind of just things that I kind of, my parents got divorced when I was about 10, but my mum remarried, and my stepdad Pete had a guitar and a like electric guitar and amp, and that's like, you know, when you're 10 years old, you're like, oh wow, electric guitar, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of starting there, really. I mean, I think we had an acoustic guitar when I was a kid, and I kind of played on that a little bit, but that was the first thing that I really got into. But I really got into Jimi Hendrix when I was kind of about 11. And that was the stuff that I really, because it was kind of, that was the music I used to listen to all the time. And yeah, just started playing because of that, really. And that was, I was always just self-taught and stuff like that, and never really had any lessons or anything. It was all just noodling and things like that. And
so you never had like music lessons?
No, I'm really dyslexic, so like any kind of like formal learning like that, I'm appalling at.
I see.
Okay. Left school with like, you know, one GCSE in art, and that was it. I was really quite terrible in that. So I did like art courses and stuff like that, and I did that kind of stuff. But yeah, with music, I think I failed my music GCSE pretty badly.
That's ironic.
But there we go. Yeah. But yeah, so not formal learning in that, but yeah, just self-taught really. Yeah.
Okay. So while you were like growing up and skating and playing music and everything, like at what point did you kind of feel like you wanted to maybe turn pro one day, or like explore skateboarding in a more professional way, if you can call it that? And did you kind of at the same time think maybe I'll do something with music as well at some point, or did that come later? Like how did it all shape kind of?
Kind of in a weird way. Like I said, it was like skateboarding was something me and Seth just always did the whole time. And quite a lot of the time, Seth was way more into skateboarding than I was. I did it all the time and stuff like that, and I really I loved doing it and stuff like that, but I never felt like I made any progress with it at all. Like I never felt like I was like, oh, you know...
Confident?
Well, confidence, and kind of like I never really I made headway with it really until I was about 17, I think. I kind of almost, when I was 16, I almost quit. Well, not quit skating, but I started skating a lot less, and I started doing rock climbing quite a lot. Did that quite a bit. Okay. Because there's a really big, in Sheffield, it's close to a bit of the UK called the Peak District, which is, it's like a national park basically. And there's loads of amazing like climbing routes, and it's got a massive history of the last, you know, however many years of people rock climbing there. And there's a really big scene in Sheffield. Okay. I got really into that, and I kind of felt like that was something that I really kind of
enjoyed a lot.
Made progress, and like I could see myself progressing at a bit and stuff. And I used to climb with these guys, a lot of whom I didn't really know, but they were kind of like quite famous climbers actually, and that was all cool and stuff. But it was like that rock climbing scene was a bit weird and a bit kind of competitive and stuff like that. And I was used to skating, which was kind of very supportive. Different in that vibe, way. And and it's kind of, so I kind of stopped doing that, then kind of came back to skating. And this was around the time, I think it was like 98. Seth moved out of Sheffield because he used to work in our local skate shop, Sumo. Right. Owned by Seb Palmer and Martin Lau and Rona Lord, who they started that in 93, I think. Okay. So that was our local skate shop. But then Seth kind of left Sheffield, and I kind of feel like I kind of had my own time in skating then a bit more. It was weird because it was kind of like, it was really cool that we got to do it together, but it was always kind of more Seth's thing, I suppose, in a lot of ways. Okay. But then it was kind of, I just got to the point where I felt like I was doing it, and I kind of improved a lot more. It's weird how things kind of happen in a weird way like that. Yeah. And that kind of tied in with, starting to get better, and the scene changing in Sheffield a bit. Mark Baines moved over, things like that, and he lived like round the corner from me. And I used to go skate with him all the time, and my friend Rob Ransford and a bunch of people. But it just felt like I actually made some progress with it. And I'd been skating for like at least 10 years, maybe 11 years by that point. Wow, okay. So, but I kind of feel like that gave me a lot of like confidence on my board kind of thing. But in terms of like tricks and stuff like that, I felt like, you know, like I'd always prefer to do back backside flips and things like that, and other things that I like to do. But I kind of felt like I had a few more of the building blocks there. It's weird. I can't really explain it, but yeah.
Okay.
And then that kind of came through with having a bit of. Me and Seth had a brothers thing in Sidewalk Surfer magazine. I think maybe 97. I think that was. And then I just kind of really started skating like every day by myself. I went to college for a bit after school. I did a couple of courses, and then was just like, you know what? I just quit them, and I just wanted to skate really. So I'd literally just skate by myself a lot.
Oh, okay.
Because everybody else was like either working, or even people like Baines, Baines was quite funny. He'd be quite specific about what he wanted to skate, but that's always the way he's done it. So, but I was just like, I'd kind of get up in the morning, have some breakfast, and just be like, I just want to go out. So I'd literally just go out and skate by myself and try and just skate. I'd skate around Sheffield loads and just try to find spots and trying to find things. And I think that was the time when the first Zero video came out as well.
Okay.
Through it all, yeah.
Sorry to cut you off, but I wanted to ask you, like, when did sponsors start for you at that time?
Well, I think that was kind of, I got on like I said, the shop was there, and
right.
I got sponsored by the shop.
Sumo.
That was, Sumo, that was probably 97. So that was my first sponsor, really. That was the first thing that I had. And then after that, I got sponsored by Panic.
That rings a bell, yeah. Was that a UK brand, or?
So basically, Panic was a precursor to Blueprint, basically.
Oh, that's right.
So there's a distributor that used to be in the UK called Phase 7, run by a guy called Joe Burlow. The first UK company there was Panic, which Paul Shire rode for, Matt Pritchard, I think Rob Selly, and a bunch of other people, Dan McGee as well, rode for that as well. And that was their first kind of attempt at a company. And that kind of went along for quite a while. And, it was very varying different degrees of quality with the graphics and stuff like that. Then kind of Dan McGee got more involved in doing more of the graphic stuff, more of the video stuff. And then they decided to start Blueprint as a kind of, and then do the two companies together. And I got on Panic just at the end of that.
Okay.
Because Colin used to ride for Panic as well, Colin Kennedy.
Oh, yeah.
I think he was maybe one of the first pros for that. And John Rattray as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I got on Panic about the time when a lot of those guys were kind of migrating over to
Moving
Blueprint,
to Blueprint. Okay, yeah. I see.
So that was maybe 98, I think. So when I was on Panic, Matt Pritchard was still pro on it, and I'm not sure if anybody else was on it by then. But that kind of just dwindled, and kind of they put all their efforts into Blueprint, and Blueprint was kind of Dan McGee's kind of brainchild with that. So yeah. So Panic kind of went by the wayside, really. So
okay.
Yeah. And then after that, I got sponsored by Zero through Slam City Skates, the distributor there. So
I wanted to ask you about that because I saw a video the other day. You were skating, I think, with Mark Baines, and you're skating a gap. You do a backside flip, I think, and you were wearing like a Circa t-shirt.
Yep.
And I don't know if it was in that specific footage, but you were skating a Zero board, and so I was wondering, like, oh, you must have been sponsored by them at that time. Maybe either brands, or were you getting both, kind of, or?
I was getting both those, but it was obviously, this was kind of in the days when it'd be like a kind of more of a distribution sponsor rather than a direct sponsor. So
sure.
It was Slam City Skates, who had a shop still do have a shop, even though it's changed hands a couple of times since then. But they had a distributor as well. They used to distribute Circa, they used to distribute Toy Machine, Zero, all the Tomito brands, Zoo York, and a bunch of other different things back then. And yeah, so I was on Circa through them and Zero as well. So yeah, that was really good because they were brands that I really liked. I really loved Jamie Thomas and those videos.
Yeah. You were about to tell me about that Zero video that you watched. Which one was it? Was it the first one, the Misled Youth?
Thrill of It All. Thrill of It All is the first one. That was like 97 that came out. So.
Oh, Misled Youth was afterwards? I don't remember.
Misled Youth 99. Yeah, that's the bit later. Okay. Yeah, so that was the first one. Is a really kind of short video, and they don't have much footage in it and stuff like that. Everyone's part's pretty short, but yeah, I really love that video because it was a lot of quite kind of basic skateboarding, really, and a kind of lot of stuff that I was really into, and like the whole kind of girl chocolate thing, which was really popular at the time, like real style, like baggy trousers, that kind of stuff. Yeah, which is amazing and stuff like that. But I couldn't do that.
You didn't relate
so
as much.
Didn't relate.
Yeah.
So I was kind of a bit more heavy metal and black clothes, and trying to do some kind of some more basic stuff, but maybe a bit faster or a bit higher, maybe, I don't know. But so that video was really good, and I kind of tried to skate a lot of spots to try and emulate those things, I suppose. And I used to go and do like a lot of kind of drop ins on stuff and things like that.
Yeah.
And like
gnarly skating, kind of like rails,
kind
gaps.
Of. But I used to go and do that by myself quite a lot as well, just like with no filmers and no, which is kind of weird. I was kind of thinking about this the other day, and I was just thinking, shit, it's actually quite dangerous. There was one thing that ended up being like a poster in Sidewalk, actually, which I was really stoked to have. But it was like a kind of like, I think the thing was like 12 foot high. There was like a big kind of like a thing, a buttress, which supports buildings, basically.
Okay.
So there's like a kind of an angled like bank thing, but it was only kind of like a foot and a half wide, maybe something like that. And then went down to 6 foot. Then there was just like a drop. So you just kind of drop in down the thing, then do the 6 foot drop. I don't know if I can find it on my phone, but yeah. But I went and did that like by myself.
Wow.
Like I went and found it on my own. Then I went back with Horsey, and I was just thinking, shit, that was actually quite dangerous at the time.
Yeah, for sure. To do alone.
I just wanted to go skate and do those things, and I kind of really wanted to, try and push myself a lot. And kind of no one else was around in the daytime, so I just kind of went and did it by myself. But there we go.
So you were getting zero boards and everything, and so at what point did Landscape start, and when did you get on? Did you get on at the very beginning of the brand, or?
Well, kind of before that, yes, because basically what happened was Zero switched distributors to another distributor called New Deal, and I wrote for them for a little bit. Around this time as well, Dan McGee started another little offshoot kind of side project called Octagon Wheels, which was, there's like an Octagon section in Waiting for the World, the first proper Blueprint video.
Okay.
There's like a section, there were all the people who were kind of, Dan used to either put on flow for stuff, or we just used to get wheels and stuff like that, and I was part of that, and I had a little bit of footage in that, which was really cool to be in that video. That's amazing. But that kind of crossed over into, I was riding for Zero through New Deal by then, but then Foz started working at Slam City Skates, who I used to ride for who used to previously distribute Zero. And I think I was still riding for Circa then, I think, maybe. So I got to know him pretty well, and obviously Foz was doing heroin skateboards at that point. That was in the really early days of that. That had just started. That was kind of like, he was spray painting boards in his house and kind of things. Like that.
Sure.
Just making little bits and stuff. And then it came around to they wanted to start a company, like an in-house company with Slam, basically. So that was Organic Skateboards, which was me, Ollie Todd, Toby Shaw, and Snowy, Snowy had started running for heroin before that, and then he moved over to
okay.
Yeah, so Organic came out, and that we kind of started to film stuff for that, and we had a little section in Dan McGee's video First Broadcast. There's an Organic section in that, which is, we all had footage in that. And then basically...
What year was that? Do you remember that video?
So that's probably, First Broadcast I think is 2002 maybe, or 2001 maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that, because it was Dan's kind of idea to do a video with, I think, a bit more kind of like a Transworld video, where he could not just do a video with everybody that's on Blueprint. Obviously there's a lot of Blueprint riders on that, but he did things with Frank Stevens and a bunch of other different people from different companies to try and showcase all these different things. And
right, yeah.
everybody on Organic had a section in that. So
okay.
So that started, that went on for about a year and a half, something like that, and that was all good. And then it kind of came down to some kind of decisions of where it was going to kind of continue. And Foz was like the warehouse manager for Slam.
Okay.
And we had meetings about where the company was going to go and all this kind of stuff. And basically there was a kind of, not disagreement, but I think a kind of thing about Foz felt he'd put a lot of time into this company, and then the people at Slam didn't come back with him with like a good deal, a percentage or whatever, a kind of like an ownership deal of it.
Okay.
They kind of saw it as more their kind of thing. And it kind of collated with Foz leaving Slam, and he said, well, I want to start a company and just have you guys on it. And we kind of thought, well, we'll go with Foz basically. So that's kind of what happened really in the end.
Okay.
And that ended up being Landscape, and that's when that started. So that must have started maybe 2002, something like that. And then we kind of started filming for the video.
So straight after the brand started, you started working on a full length. That was the plan.
I think pretty much, yeah. I mean, it was kind of, but it's talking to people about it. Really, it's like it kind of just came together weirdly. It wasn't like it's like the guy who made Portraits is a guy called Chris Massey.
Yep, who is gone, right? He's
he passed away unfortunately a few years ago. But he was a friend of Dan McGee's. He used to live with Dan. Okay. And he started filming a little bit around London, and in a weird way, he kind of came around to do this video for Foz and for Landscape. Okay. But yeah, that was a really quite a weird process of that kind of stuff. Because I suppose I'd had video parts. I had a part for the sumo video, which was 98, I think. And then the part you're talking about with Mark Baines, that was in Steady, which is a guy called Neil Chester who made that one. And then Mark made a video I had part in as well called Driving South, which is still somewhere, I think. But yeah, this was the kind of first video part of like a company that I rode for. And, there's a project that I kind of really really wanted to get my teeth into. But it's such a weird process. Anybody that's filmed a video part, I'm sure they'll tell you, it's like it never feels like you're making progress with it. And it's especially back then as well. I think maybe these days it might be a little bit easier when you could probably like share footage a bit easier. But if you wanted to see all the footage you had to physically go to the place.
Yeah.
Sit down with someone at a computer and look at it.
Look at it like clip by clip and
Exactly. And I didn't do that till it was edited, till it was finished.
Okay.
So it was just a question of just like film as much as possible. And we went on a couple of trips and things like that. And I went on trips. I used to go on trips quite regularly with Dan and everybody from Blueprint. We used to go to Mallorca and Barcelona and stuff like that. And there was one trip I did with Oliver Barton, who now works for Primitive.
Right.
Used to work for Skateboarder, and he did they had an article in Skateboarder which was like one photographer and one skater for a week kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
So he wanted to do that with Mark Baines, and Ollie drove us from Sheffield to Barcelona and back in a week.
Wow.
So we went to Paris, Lyon, some bits in the South France, some Provence, loads of places. For like a week of like solid, we stayed with Al Boglio and the guys at Cliche for a couple of nights. And
amazing. That must have been fun.
it was really good, yeah. It was an intense week.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
I filmed quite a bit of my part actually with Dan McGee for that.
Okay.
Which, always grateful for that. But yeah, that was a key trip for me, especially for that part, definitely.
I wanted to ask you also, just changing gears a little bit, but while we're still talking about sponsors, I know that you skated for like the Nike SB UK team for a while. And I was wondering, like, when did you get on? Because I remember I started skating in 2000, and I think Nike started a few years later, maybe in 2003, 4, I'm not too sure. They had been trying for years to get into the skateboarding industry. It never really worked for them because people were kind of rejecting Nike for a long time. They didn't want to like do the whole corporate brand thing, but eventually it worked. Once they started this new program with all these iconic pros, and after a while they got Paul Rodriguez and other people on and everything. I was wondering at what point did you get on, and if it was in the very early years of Nike, how did your friends in the skate industry or community in Sheffield or wherever you were at that time, how did they react to you getting Nike shoes at that time?
Well, it was all happened quite naturally because the guy who started the skate shop, Seb Palmer, was actually the rep for Nike. So he changed into that basically. I rode for Circa for a little while. Before that, I think Globe for a little bit as well. And then after that, I rode for Savia. Do you remember Savia shoes?
Yeah. That was also a Nike brand, right?
Well, I don't think that's ever really been denied or confirmed. I don't know.
Okay.
That was the possibility. I don't know the ins and outs of that. And that was, again, for me, was like a distributor deal. So it was kind of just, there's a really good guy called Cubic who used to be the kind of rep and the kind of TM for that. He's a great guy. But yeah, he hooked me up with that. And then basically Savia folded, and
Xavier had Stefan Janowski and Brian Anderson, people like that.
Brian Anderson, Colin Kennedy, John Rattray had a pro shoe on them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Which was a really good shoe. That one was amazing. But yeah, then basically that kind of folded, and Seb was just like, oh, if you want to get on Nike, I can get you on that. I was like, yeah, definitely. Amazing. And they'd already built up quite a big team. Colin was already on, and a bunch of different people. So yeah, that was probably 2004, maybe, I think, something like that. So quite early days of that first iteration of it. They just kind of moved over, because when they started, I think maybe 2002, something like that, they had I think one of Nike's things is they always kind of try and be very progressive with the materials and their kind of what they use to kind of make something technically proficient, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a lot of the shoes they had were kind of quite, not weird designs, but kind of quite specifically engineered for skateboarding, and kind of a bit more kind of reinventing a kind of skate shoe, really. And it's I think that got rejected not only because of maybe people's opinion about Nike or whatever, but also these people were used to Vans, they were used to Etnies, these very kind of quite simple shoes, basically.
Right, yeah.
And it was just when kind of Nike had kind of realised that they had to kind of go back to kind of the Dunks and stuff like that, which people skated in.
A more traditional kind of route.
More traditional kind of shoes and stuff like that, I think. And that's when the kind of the Gino ones came out and all that kind of stuff. And
okay.
So, but that was really good to ride for them at that point. I mean, it's tough with that kind of corporate involvement with something like skateboarding in a lot of ways. But at the same time, Vans is a massive corporation, is owned by.
For sure, yeah.
And that's not criticism of them or whatever. But that's just the way these things are. It's I always felt like it was better to kind of be with, because it's not like it was just some faceless guy on the phone who I was dealing with. It was my friend who worked for the company. So it was kind of and I think that is the thing. It's if there is going to be this corporation involvement in skateboarding, which there inevitably is, it's about the people who are involved in the kind of managing that and doing that. So
sure,
you could have some corporate corporation which has just got some guy who just goes and hires a bunch of people and has got no involvement in skateboarding and stuff like that, and that's never good. But through Seb, I got to meet people like Hunter, who's one of the guys at Nike SB in America, and he's an amazing guy and always really nice, always really supportive. And they had a budget to send me places. I got to go to Australia, I got to go to Europe a bunch of times with like do demos and stuff like that, and those things are so hard for independent companies, and especially British companies or European companies, to kind of fund.
Well, there wasn't that much money in skating, and
Landscape, was a great company to ride for, but we had no money at all.
It was a small brand.
Really small, and it's like everyone was just hand to mouth with that stuff, and that's not complaining about that, and it's not like
no, of course,
but it's just the way those things are. So to have a bit of that kind of like as many shoes as I could eat, and all that kind of stuff, it was great. So I always look back on that as a really good thing, and it's like getting to go away with Colin and a lot of those guys was amazing as well. Colin was a really old friend of mine, Colin Kennedy. So it was great to have him on the team. Then a bunch of different people like Karan in Bristol. From Bristol was an early guy on the team and stuff. And Chewy used to ride for them, and loads of friends.
Really?
So
because
really good.
He's been on Adidas for
a long time. But he
was on Nike before that. Okay.
He was on Nike. Snowy was on as well. So like just go and get to do trips like to Australia and stuff like that with my friends was amazing. Yeah, really good.
So you didn't have people like around you giving you shit about getting on Nike, basically. They weren't like telling you Nike is evil or something, or...
Well, I think anything like that, they'd always kind of remove the personal from it. They'd always be like, oh, Nike's a load of shit. But I don't think people never had personally had a go at me about it. And and maybe they did and I didn't hear it. But at the same time, I think it would always be, well, if someone's going to take the money and get paid, that's kind of their choice. And that's the way I always look at that as well. I would never blame anybody for taking money for skateboarders.
Sure, of course, yeah.
And wherever it's coming from. Because if you're going to get paid to do something that you love to do like that, I think that is, obviously, there might be some companies or certain things that everyone's got their line of what they, obviously like some of the things like Olympics and things like that's a whole different ball game, or with those being in the countries they've just been in and stuff like that would be, if I was in that situation, I'd question that quite a lot, I think.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, that's maybe paradoxical, but
But you weren't like too hesitant, like you had your friend working there, and you had all these things that
completely.
Kind of felt like it was a good move and a good
well, exactly. I mean, like my involvement with the corporation was nil, basically.
Right, yeah.
It was just like riding for anybody else, really. So
okay.
It wasn't like they were kind of phoning me up and telling me what to do or how I should behave or anything like that. So,
thank God, yeah.
yeah, totally.
And so to come back to portraits, I wanted to ask you, like, I don't remember when I saw that video for the first time, but I have a strong memory of it, especially your part. First, because it's the first one. Also because, like, at that time, I think I was super into, like, tech skating. And, like, obviously you're not a super tech skater. Like, you're a bit more of a more basic, but really well executed tricks and stuff. Nice selection of spots and everything. More curated, kind of, than going towards a very technical side of skating.
Yeah.
But like, I really liked your part, and especially I didn't know the song at first when I heard it. I didn't know it was The Cure. I didn't really know The Cure that well at that point when I was a teenager. And so I just felt like, wow, this song and this type of skating and like a lot of footage at night and everything, like it gave a very strong like feeling. And I felt that with a few other parts, throughout my life, like for example, I don't know, totally different, of course, but like I remember seeing like the DC video and watching Kalis skate to, I think, Gangstar.
Yeah.
Or like Jake Johnson in Minefield skating to Animal Collective.
Yeah.
Like there's a few skaters / song or band that really match together so well. And I put your part definitely up there in that list of like iconic parts for me.
Oh, thanks a lot. That's amazing.
No, of course. And I was wondering, like, do you have like one part that comes to mind in that regard? Like of a part of a skater that you really like and that the music fitted his skating really well? Do you have something that comes to mind?
Yeah, a bunch, yeah. But I suppose if I had to pick a couple of video parts, I think there are parts, it's like the skateboarders that I really like and like I love their sections and stuff like that. But I think I know what you're talking about. It's kind of a coming together of the parts come together to make something a bit more than just the skating or just the music or just the section. The two that I'd pick is probably Jamie Thomas in Misled Youth.
What song was he skating to?
So it's a couple, but Barbara O'Reilly by The Who is the main one, which is kind of like, it's so funny because it's one of those songs now that kind of like has been on so many things and is like, and you're kind of real in the public consciousness quite a lot and things like that. But
right, yeah.
I obviously heard of The Who because I was a big music fan, but that's one song that I'd not really heard. So it kind of like the first time I saw it was that, and the first time I heard that music was on that section.
Okay.
And I was like a massive Jamie Thomas fan.
Yeah.
So and then I think he's got a Doors track at the end as well, the end.
Oh, yeah.
And that's, like, he's one of those guys that I always really loved his output because he really did think about the whole structure of the video and kind of how it was edited, and was, I think, one of the key people historically in skateboard videos, actually, I think. Just because of how much he kind of boiled down a lot of those kind of tropes in skate videos. And especially, I mean, it's a particular type of skate video and that kind of stuff. But
he had a clear vision of what he wanted to achieve, and yeah, for sure.
Definitely, yeah. And I think that's kind of something which is, was not happening. So, like I say, happening in different ways for other things, but I think he really made something quite very
unique,
simple, but very, very impactful. Yeah, definitely. And I think the other one for me would probably be Jason Dillon, Photosynthesis, I think.
Oh, a Radiohead song? Or
it's a Radiohead song.
Right.
I was not a big Radiohead fan for a long time, but that really...
That's an iconic one as well, yeah, for sure.
That's an iconic one, and that really changed my opinion about a lot of stuff in skateboarding as well. It actually changed my skateboarding quite a lot as well, because I was kind of coming out of that kind of zero Jamie Thomas phase, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I saw that video part and I just thought, well, it doesn't have to be. Yeah, a lot of the stuff in that video is
big rails, big gaps, and
exactly. And I kind of that was really inspirational in the way of like, oh, he's kind of he's tech, but it's kind of more to do with the style rather than kind of like being dope, as inverted commas kind of thing.
Yeah.
But he kind of like had a twist on not only his clothes and the way he dressed and things like that, but the way he skated as well was just like. And I think that part really is, if you look back now, it's like how much of an influence that had on skating today and how much that kind of stuff, obviously there's a bunch of people who have massive influence today, but I think that's a real key one, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, especially that whole video is pretty seminal, really.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Did Photosynthesis come out before? Yeah, it came out a few years before Portraits, right? Like early 2000s, maybe?
So I suppose...
2000, 2001,
2000,
maybe?
2001, yeah. So it was a couple of years before that, yeah. So,
okay.
So yeah, I think that was probably the stuff in Portraits that I had was kind of probably inspired a lot by the Jason Dill part, and maybe trying to move over to a bit less handrails and stuff like that. And because I felt like, like handrail skating is something I did a bit, but I never really got very tech with it because it kind of moved on a lot, and it's like like simple like 50/50s and lip slides and board slides are fair enough, but you can only have so many of those in a section or whatever, and you can only have. At that point, I felt like it had to be more unique to have it in there, and there's some bits in that in Portraits, but
it's a good mix. I think the Portraits part, because it's there's some big skating, if you can call it that, and some more like elegant kind of tech. Like there's this spot in London where you do a manual revert to fakie manual.
Oh yeah.
That looks simple when you watch it, but like anybody who tries it, it's actually very hard. Like you just did it really well, and especially like in the middle of the part, it was like a nice little twist or something like
well, that is actually a direct reference to that Jason Dill part, because he does one on Pier 7 he does exactly the same trick on Pier 7, so I kind of justified it by saying, well, this one's quite a lot higher, so I felt like it wasn't too much of a bite. Do you know what I mean?
yeah
But that was an inspiration from that, really. So,
okay, interesting.
So that is a direct homage to that, I suppose. Yeah.
So to continue on Portraits, tell me how you worked with Chris, right? Chris
Massey, yes.
Yeah, who directed the video.
Yeah.
How did you work with him on like putting together that part? Did he kind of do it all by himself, so to speak, and have you come in at the end and showed it to you and asked you?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, that was kind of because I was living in Sheffield still, and he was in London, and obviously Toby Shaw, Ollie Todd, and Snowy were all in London as well. So he was filming with them quite a lot. You were the only one outside of it, yeah. I was the only one outside of it, so I filmed a bit with different people and some people in Sheffield. I think I've probably filmed with Baines a little bit, Mark Baines. Mm-hmm. But I used to go to London pretty regularly, really, because my brother lived there, and he was, he met his wife by then, and they had a house, so I used to go and just crash on their sofa for weeks on end. But so I never really lived in London, but I felt a real massive connection to that scene, really, and while I was still kind of, Sheffield was where I lived and where I was that was my main scene really. But I always felt London was kind of like a second scene that I was, knew loads of people at and stuff, and which was always amazing. And that they were always really, really cool for that. And but yeah, Chris was working away really, and I was kind of, sending him footage and occasionally coming down. I filmed a little bit with him when we went on a couple of trips to Paris and things like that. And
oh yeah, I want to ask you about and I think we talked about this over Instagram once, like you do this back three on the Ivry blue wave thing,
Oh yeah.
That's in Ivry. It's right in the south of Paris.
Yes.
And you do first you do a back 5-0 on the whole thing, and then you do a back three. And I think that back three at that time just blew my mind the way you did it.
Okay.
I was wondering how much of a battle, so to speak, was it, or did it come very easily for you to do that trick, or did it take you a long time to get it done, or?
It didn't actually, and I think that's kind of, I started doing that trick a little bit more around that time, and I think that was actually one of the first ones that I kind of did, I think.
Okay, wow.
Quite early on, I didn't really do many towards that point, because I'd maybe done a couple, maybe a couple of things, I think. I'm trying to think. It's hard to remember, but that was just one day we went to that spot, and Soy kind of nose wheelied that day, I think, as well, and I was just kind of skating it with him, and I started trying the back 5-0, and that spot is one of my favourite spots in the world. It's so good. It's just so smooth and really good. But those ledges are quite kind of rounded and soapy from what I remember. So it was kind of like when you got it, I got into that 5-0 and it would always kind of slip out to the side or go off a little bit. And so that took a little while, and I think I started trying the 360 after that.
Okay.
And yeah, I don't remember it being a long time, but like I say, it was kind of like I was still trying to figure that trick out a bit then. So I think I just probably got lucky. So just hit it right. But yeah, as the saying goes, some days you eat the bar, some days the bar eats you, and that was a day I was all right. But I found out like a bit later on that JJ Russo had done the 5-0 I think the week before.
Yeah, that one was in Bon Appetit or something.
Yeah.
Probably. I think it came out that same year, more or less. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that same day I tried to nose grind it as well.
Oh.
But I did there was no fucking way.
That's hard.
Yeah.
Somebody must have done it at this point, but
maybe. And I think it would probably be cool to do a nose grind, kind of pop out the top of the second wave bit. That would be cool. But
sure.
If I was going to do it, I was going to do the whole lot, and it was too steep.
Yeah.
Another one that got away was there's another spot in Paris which is like a bank. People do tricks into the bank, then there's a drop at the bottom. It's into a road. I don't know where that is.
Yeah, I think I see what you mean, but I don't think that spot is there anymore.
Right, okay, yeah. But that one I tried to ollie into nose wheelie down the bank.
Oh, damn.
And I got off it a couple of times, but I couldn't put it down.
Couldn't stick it?
I'd nose wheelie the whole thing, but then couldn't get off the end. But yeah.
That must be scary too. Ollie and that makes me anxious just thinking about it.
It was sketchy, but yeah, I was really wanting to go back and do that, but then we just didn't get a chance.
Too bad.
Yeah. I think that was a trip with Foz and Seth. I went to Paris once for that, but that was another one that got away. But yeah.
So we talked about working on the part with Chris, but were you very picky on the way you executed a certain trick? Would you ask to see the footage right after you, for example, let's talk about the back three. Once you did that one, did you ask to see it in order to, it's good enough, or were you kind of well, whatever, I did it, I don't care what it looks like or something? How did you approach kind of that?
It would usually be either you'd watch it at the time once, and that would be kind of it. And to do with filming stuff like that, I totally trusted Chris, and he was a really good filmer. Mm-hmm. And everybody else I filmed with, I was never kind of I don't know, about this. Or I'd always come at it from my point of view. If there was something I didn't like about how I landed it, I'd want to do it again. I wouldn't let those things go until I was happy with it. But in terms of the filming and stuff like that, it's back then you'd probably watch it once when you made it, because obviously with DV tape like that, the more you rewind and watch it, the more it's the possibility of it degrading and stuff like that.
Right, yeah.
Possibly glitching and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then once it got put down onto a lot of those trips, you kind of go home at the end of the day, they'd all get dumped onto the computer, and sometimes you'd watch it back then and stuff like that. But I was always thinking about my part of the deal really, rather than anybody else's. And I totally had total faith in Chris to either film it or even in the edit, put it together. And like I said, I didn't really see that part until it was done.
Okay.
I remember going to London and kind of going to specifically to go and watch it, and I just went around his house. It was in Boston Manor. And another funny thing was, I'd picked that song.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that, yeah.
Yeah, but I'd kind of It was in my parents' record collection actually, and they had a Cure album. And I was kind of listening to that, and it was a remix like album that they did in I think 1990.
Okay.
So there's one like a remixed version, a lot of kind of like there's a lot of samples on it, and a bit more kind of drum machines and stuff like that. Because that one is quite drum machiney anyway.
Yeah.
It sounds quite different to a lot of the Cure stuff back then, but this version that I heard, I was like, oh yeah, I really want this song. And I told Chris, it's called A Forest by the Cure, and he's like, oh okay. And he heard one, and he was like, and I think he heard that one, he was like, I don't know if it sounds a bit dancey and stuff like that. But then somehow he found the original version of it, which I hadn't heard. And then I came down to watch my part, and I was like, oh, this isn't the song that I picked.
Yeah.
But then I was like, oh, this is a different version. And I was like, oh, it is the song. And it's like we'd had the same song but two different versions of it in our minds basically. But then I went around to see it, and I was just like, oh yeah, that's really good.
Oh, so the one he ended up using is not the one you had initially. Okay.
Initially, that I knew was in my mind. Yeah. So it was this remixed version of it, which was I'll send you the link to it.
Yeah, I'd love to listen to like the one you had discovered. Yeah, I'd be curious to see the differences. Yeah.
But yeah, like I say, it's probably ironically, even though the original version is older, I think the remix version is probably dated a bit more because it's got like a lot of kind of beaty things which are kind of quite 90s in there. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, regardless, it worked so well on your skating, and it turned out really great. Yeah, the whole video is amazing. I was happy with it. Yeah. I think that's the thing that I kind of come away with, that it's kind of weird in a way to kind of talk about a video that I was in that I kind of like, oh yeah, it was really good or whatever, and it's not I want to do that. But I think there's a lot of videos, there's so many skate videos that came out then and stuff like that which people have just forgotten about, and I think well, yeah, for sure,
that one has a through line and has a kind of something which a lot of other videos don't have, I think.
Yeah, it has a very strong identity and like it gives you a strong feeling. Yeah, for sure. It definitely, how do you say, stands the test of time, or it's definitely an iconic video for me. Yeah, it's a really good one.
Yeah, because I think that's just like you say about that thing about it being the combination of the music, the skating, and
the spots, the variety of skating between all four of you. Yeah, just also it's just four skaters. It's not, well, I mean, there must be some other people.
There's a few friends in there, just dropped into, but they're in the parts. Yeah, like my brother's got a trick, and I think Soy's got a trick in my section as well. But yeah.
Oh, does he? Okay.
Yeah, just one, I think. Yeah.
So I'm kind of moving a bit further in time, but I wanted to ask you about like, so I think you said on your website, that I think that's where I saw it, you said that you retired from pro skating in 2009.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about like kind of how did the few years between portraits and you deciding to quit pro skating in 2009, and also like what kind of made you decide to retire? Was there like a gnarly injury of some sort that kind of pushed you with this decision, or how did the following years happen for you?
Well, it's kind of weird because kind of Portraits came out, and we kind of kept that going, the momentum of that going for a little bit, and Chris did another little promo for us when Soy got on.
Yeah.
And I was really happy with all the footage. Like I filmed with him quite a lot for that, and I was really stoked on that stuff. And then it was kind of the culminating time of a lot of stuff changing in my life, really. I moved from Sheffield. I met my wife, basically. Right. We moved to Bath.
What made you decide to move down there? Did she have family out there, or?
No, she got a job here, basically. She was living in London. She worked in the fashion industry before that.
Okay.
And she used to live in Italy and Paris and Milan, a bunch of stuff. And she'd just taken a job at the university here teaching fashion.
Okay. How did you feel at the time? Were you like down for it, or were you kind of like,
well, I was kind of going to move to, I was there and stuff, but I was kind of like, I have to leave because I'd been there my whole life, basically. I was just like, I want to go somewhere else. I was going to move to London.
Oh, okay.
And then obviously I met Kerry, and she was living in London at the time, so we kind of were there for a little bit. But then she was like, "Oh, I'm going to move to Bath because of this job," and I was like, "Well, if I'm going to move to London, there's no point in me moving there, and then you're going to be somewhere else. I might as well just we kind of figured out we wanted to live together and stuff. So we just moved here, really. It was kind of on a whim. It was kind of one of those things where you don't think about it, but it's just like, oh yeah, we're just going to do that, and it's just what happened, really. And it was fine. And it's kind of a few things kind of happened after that, like I think about 2 months after I left, I think the Sumo shut down.
Oh yeah.
So that shop had been there for a long time, since 93 to, nearly, over 20 years, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then that shut, which was kind of like an end of an era in the Sheffield scene, definitely. And quite a lot of people kind of migrated. And obviously, these things happen in skate scenes and cities all the time of people coming in and out. And so that was a kind of weird one. And I kind of moved down here, and I started to go to Bristol quite a lot. I started working in 50/50, which is a shop owned by Justin Sydenham and Danny Wainwright.
So Bristol is close to Bath, right?
Bristol's like 12 miles away, yes.
Okay,
so it's pretty
okay.
close. Yeah.
My geography of the UK is not that good.
It's totally fine. Yeah, my French geography is probably terrible. But so that was a really interesting thing to do, and it was good to be part of that scene in Bristol. And I worked at a skate shop here in Bath for a little bit as well, which was good.
Were you still skating professionally when you moved to Bath, or?
Yeah, so I was still pro and still doing that, and I was still, when I was working at 50/50, I'd still go on trips every now and again and still do all that stuff. But the main reason for kind of quitting was we had our first child, which was in 2006, my son Logan.
2006? Okay, so he's like 17?
It's coming up for 17 in July, yes.
Wow.
yeah, he's got a job in a pub and everything. Yeah, it's quite crazy.
Amazing.
So that was the kind of thing of, it was getting to the point where, you know, when you have kids in a family situation, if you want to be part of it, you have to contribute, basically. So you either have to contribute, well, to put it bluntly, you have to contribute time or money, basically. And so it's like, and obviously me and my wife are still very much together, and it's as we still are today, but it's one of those things you just have to do. And it was kind of like, well, if my wife had a good job and she was working hard, and it's like, well, you know, I'm going to work in a skate shop the whole time to pay for childcare. It's like, it seems stupid, really.
Yeah, I see.
And then it was kind of, you'd get to the point where she'd have to take time off work for me to go on skate trips, basically. So it just got to the point where it was unmanageable. And it's like, and the thing was as well, I mean, I wasn't making any much or little money to be a professional skateboarder at that point. It was just, you know, I was getting board royalties. I had a small retainer from Nike and stuff like that, but we're talking, it wasn't even covering costs of what I was doing. So and I had the point where I was just like, you know, so I was doing it got to the point where I was doing childcare the whole week, and then I'd try and go and film at the weekend, and I'd be pretty knackered, and I was having back problems as well, just because, you know, when you kind of are carrying kids around the whole day, that's hard on you physically. And I'd had back injuries already. So that was the kind of thing where it was just like, I was trying to skate the weekend and feeling out of shape and feeling like I'm not, you know, because every time I'd go out, I'd be like, oh, I want to film because I want to get some stuff done. I want to get some photos.
Want to be productive.
Do these things. Exactly, yeah. And that kind of put a lot of pressure. I put like pressure on myself to do it. And I think it just got to the point where I was just like, I'm just not enjoying it anymore.
Yeah.
It got to that point where I remember the day, I think, when I was in London. I went to London with Alan Glass, who's started filming the landscape stuff. And
who's been on your podcast a bunch of times,
He has, he's a good friend of mine. He works at Shiner Distribution now.
Right.
And I went to London with him one day, and I was like, we were out filming somewhere, and I tried to do something, and I just got hurt, and I was just like, you know what, I'm fucking done with this. I can't. I didn't think that I was earning the right to be pro, basically, and I didn't feel happy with it. I didn't feel like I'd done anything really since that promo that came out with Soy that time that I'd been really happy with or proud of. I had one interview in Sidewalk, which I was kind of stoked on, but I think that was maybe 2005. That was kind of the last thing that I was kind of like, oh, I'm really happy with this. And after that, I was just kind of like, well, you know, I'd rather just concentrate on being with my son and bringing him up and doing that, and have, you know, just commit to that, really, I suppose. And in a kind of, you know, not to be kind of like pulled away from it. And I still wanted to skate, and I still did skate loads for a long time after that, and, you know, little bits now and again. But that was the point where I was just kind of like, well, it's such a different zone to be like a parent in that situation. It's like, I suppose I was 28 when he was born. Okay. So I was still kind of young in that way, but it's a lot of work, and it's very physically tiring having a baby and all that stuff, as anybody knows who's done it. But to marry those two things together was really tough. And I just thought, well, I'd rather actually just call it now rather than trying to eke it out and feel like I wasn't doing it properly, or, you know, my nightmare thing would be say someone, you know, there's someone say that guy doesn't deserve to be pro anymore, kind of thing. I just
I see.
I don't want that at all. Do you know what I mean? So I'd rather just
call it quits,
cut that off, and just skate for fun, basically, which I started doing from then, really. But I had a little part in the Horizons video, and I think that was 2008, but there was not very much footage, and the footage I had, I was kind of happy with, in that, but there just was nowhere near enough, really. I just didn't have the time to do it. And it was just that point of just being like, you know what, it's like, I'm not getting paid for this, I'm not having fun.
What's the point?
Just call it. Exactly. So that's kind of where that stopped, really.
So that was 2009. And so tell me about like kind of transitioning from skating professionally and having it such a big part of your life. And so, as you said, you became a dad, so you were probably spending a lot of time with your son and everything. But then like music started coming back into your life, and I'm sure it has been there the whole time, but like...
Yeah, completely.
At what point did you kind of start thinking maybe I could work on some music projects and try to explore something with that? Like how did it all develop from there?
that kind of came on and I started to, they both went kind of hand in hand really for a long time. I think I got my first like computer in about 2000, I think.
Okay.
I started doing music that way because I think before that it's weird to think about a kind of an analog point in that. And I had like a little 4-track tape machine and would make things on that quite a lot. But it's only really the advent of kind of being able to do things in a home studio scenario, which really has freed up in the last, in the last 20 years really is, it's night and day from what it was. Do you know what I mean? Like,
for sure, yeah.
All you need these days is a laptop and an audio interface, and you can make loads of guitar stuff, or you can make loads of things, and it's just to do with that really, and that kind of how that kind of breaking out to be able to just teach yourself how to use things. And obviously like things like YouTube and all that kind of stuff, there's so much more stuff, there's just information out there which just wasn't there when I was younger to do anything. You just literally had like a guitar and an amp and that was it, and to even record something on a tape was like a mission, so
yeah.
So all that kind of stuff culminated on just doing music more really. And then I did a few things for Dan McGee. I think the first thing I did was for the bonus Jimmy Boy section on I think it was Lost and Found maybe. I did some music for that.
Okay.
And then when Dan kind of stopped doing Blueprint and going into more commercial stuff, I just started doing little bits for him really. Him and Percy Dean, and they work for different people, and they just started hitting me up for music stuff, and it's kind of gone from there really. I still do that a little bit, but that has such a kick in the nuts over COVID really, because everyone just, all that stuff got really, like, everybody's budgets got pulled in for making stuff. How free and easy it was to go and film stuff, and it's a really weird one with that kind of doing commercial music like that, because it's got to a point now where you can get so much stuff that's just free to use. This or that, and so it's really hard unless you're kind of really well established. Which I just kind of felt like I was getting a bit of more of a ball rolling than kind of COVID hit really. It was because that's kind of been the last few years.
Yeah.
But I just did some music for a friend of mine for a documentary she made, and that won a couple of awards. The documentary did in New York and stuff like that. So that's really good.
Oh, nice.
So that stuff's still going, and I still make music all the time. But it's just that I'd like to do more of that commercial stuff as well, and try and get back on that. But I've been doing that and the podcast as well, which is kind of another thing which takes up a lot of that time and stuff like that. So that's been a kind of another wrinkle in all that stuff. Really.
Yeah.
So
we're going to talk about that for sure. Yeah.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But before we do that, I wanted to ask you a bit more about the music gigs that you did. So you did a bunch of things for like a lot of brands in skateboarding and outside skateboarding. Yeah. I didn't know that you did the music for the Paving Space piece.
The one
you mentioned Dan a bunch of times.
Yes.
I had Rafael Zarca on the podcast.
Like it was great. Yeah,
last
really
summer
good.
Or something. I don't remember, a while back, and I remember watching that a few years ago and really enjoying it and getting super interested in his work. And I just discovered as I was preparing for this interview that you did the music for it, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, that makes sense. And so what would you say is one of your favorite kind of projects that you've worked on? I'm sure the Paving Space one must have been a very cool one to work on because of all the great people involved and everything.
Yeah, that was really good.
Are there other ones that come to mind in skateboarding or not that you enjoyed very much?
I'm trying to think really. I did quite a few ones for New Balance, which are not skateboard bit New Balance, but the regular bit for Percy Dean. I did a few of those, which were really good. But yeah, the Paving Space one was really interesting because that was like Dan McGee is he's incredible. He's really good at. He's such a he can be quite a tough taskmaster as if he's filming your skateboard, and if you're doing music for him, he's quite specific and quite demanding in a good way.
Okay.
So that he was like, no, it has to be like this. No, I want this. And it's like he has a vision about what he wants, and that was really good to work with on that. And yeah, I think I did like 90% of the music on that. There's one other guy who did one track, I think, which is a really good track as well. The guy Ben Crook.
How did you work with him on that actually? Like, did he kind of edit the whole thing and then ask you to score it, or were you involved in the whole editing process? Like, how did it work?
It's kind of a back and forth. Usually he does send me stuff sometimes, and then I kind of do stuff to that. Or but the best way to do it is kind of, especially from a music point of view, to try and, especially if you have beats in things and stuff like that, it's way easier to edit around the music rather than the other way around.
Yeah.
But it's kind of usually a kind of mix between the two, basically. So it's usually a back and forth. He sends me something, I send it back.
It's like do it a bit faster, or like put a pause in there, or
speed
something.
Up, slow it down, do this, chop this bit, kind of have just this bit of this track, and maybe with this and that, or maybe take this bit out and take that bit out. So it's a kind of dialogue really, and it's really rewarding to do something like that. It did remind me a lot about working on skate parts, actually.
Yeah, for sure.
There is that kind of the collaboration of doing things. But that one especially was like a really good, because there was not only just the sections they did because there's like 3 different places that the blocks were, or in the different, so there's like different tracks to those, but there's also intro tracks for different bits, and he'd say, I really want this to sound like this or that or that. So it's kind of like, and from a musical point of view, it's really interesting to have that because, music, like anything that you do, is like you can end up doing a lot of stuff that sounds very similar, basically.
Yeah.
Because of anything, but because you have your instruments, you have your things you like to do, and the ways you work, basically. So anything that brings you out of that and makes you think in a different way about it is always really fantastic. It makes you grow a lot, really, as a musician, for sure. And it's kind of the similar thing with skating when you kind of go to new spots, or you're on a trip or something like that. You have this kind of inspiration. You're not just down to your local park doing something. You're
taking outside of your comfort zone, kind of. Yeah.
Exactly, and it's like it's only through those projects and through those situations that you get to do those things. Really, I think. So I think that was really interesting. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, that's definitely one of my favorites for sure.
And so also you did an interesting piece for, you made the music for, I'm not sure how to call it, like an organization for blind veterans from the UK.
Yeah, that was another thing that Percy Dean did, yeah.
Right. I watched it yesterday and I thought, it must have been it's completely different, like from skating and other stuff, like commercials and stuff. Yeah, that must have been an interesting project. Like, how did you get involved with them?
Well, just through Percy, really, and just through working with him, and just doing music that way. I mean, Percy's another one who's like he's got such an amazing eye for photography and for filmmaking. Really, he's made so many. He's made videos for like Elbow, the band, and all kinds of different things, loads of different projects, and. Mm-hmm. But he's someone else who has got such a real through line of how he does everything visually and stuff like that. And yeah, that one was just I sent him a bunch of music and he really liked one and put it to it. And yeah, that was so my kind of involvement that was not much, but the thing when it came out I was really happy with it because that's a lot of that is Percy's editing and his filming and really good.
Yeah, it turned out well. Yeah. And so you said you're not doing those as much these days because of COVID and everything.
I think it's kind of post-COVID. I think a lot of those kind of creative markets have really struggled just in terms of their kind of financing. Really, I think. Mm-hmm. And it's like I say as well. I've been doing kind of more podcast stuff in that thing and just kind of coming. Like I say, I've just done this stuff for this the documentary that came out. So hopefully, more stuff will come from that, and I'd like to do that more. But
what's that documentary again that you mentioned?
So this
earlier?
was a documentary about. It's called After Fred. It was made by a friend of mine, Rachel Merrick, who's a filmer and editor. It's about a woman in Oklahoma and about her kind of, she's 93 now, I think. And like she made another big, long documentary about kind of domestic abuse in America, basically.
Okay.
About the legal system there and about how that, the courts and all these things are way more biased towards men in that situation than women.
Okay.
Especially when it comes to do with like child who has the rights to the children, basically, and all those things, and custody. Custody of the kids, yes. So the custody of that stuff is way more weighted to men. So she made a documentary about that, but this was the footage that she made this shorter documentary about was with this one woman in Oklahoma who was kind of had this 50-year relationship with marriage with this guy, and it was kind of and her story about it really. And it's probably going to come out online, I think, but it's been doing kind of festivals and things like that at the minute. But that's a really really good thing to be part of. Yeah, definitely. We just had a screening here in Bath a few weeks ago.
Okay,
which was great. Yeah, really good.
That seems interesting. Yeah, I'd love to see that when it comes out for sure.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I'd love to do more things like that, and definitely more long form or anything to do with like soundtrack stuff would be incredible, really. So it's just getting the connections and finding those things, definitely. Yeah, but definitely want to do more.
Cool. Yeah, I hope you get back to doing more of those. But
well, that's the thing. It's like I'm making music all the time, so it's just a question of like I always think when I'm making music, I always just think this is perfect for something, but it is just those things of just being like the two things finding each other in the right way.
The timing, yeah.
Yeah, it's like skateboarding in that way. It's about the things coming together, and it's like sometimes they come together and sometimes they don't. But then sometimes I'll make a piece of music and it'll just sit on my hard drive. Hard drive for ages, and then someone will phone up and say, "Oh, I need this," and I'll play it to them. And they're like, "Oh, that's perfect." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just the way these things work. Yeah, completely. So it's like I never see it as anything of those things stopping or whatever. It's just freelance work is like that. It's just
yeah, it has like ups and downs and waves of
peaks and troughs all the time. Yeah, but I'm always wanting to do it and always open to doing more. So yeah, and always working on music. Yeah, definitely.
I wanted to ask you a bit about the podcast as well. Of course,
Yeah.
I saw that you started in May, at least you released the first episode in May 2021.
Yeah.
I don't remember who was the very first guest. I didn't write it down, but...
It was French, the artist French,
Yes.
Richard Sayer. Yeah, yes.
So I wanted to ask you, like, how did you decide to, start a podcast? What was kind of the inspiration? I assume you must have been listening to podcasts prior to launching yours. And, like, which ones were you kind of influenced by and everything? Like, tell me about the genesis of the Skate Creative podcast.
Well, that was just through kind of coming. I've been a podcast fan for a lot of time, in a lot of different ones. Obviously, like the Nine Club is one which is there, which is the skate kind of thing, which has changed quite a lot in the time that it's been out there. But that was not only like an inspiration, but kind of like it was more kind of coming out of like just doing like Zoom quizzes over lockdown. Basically, I was just it's getting to the point where it's funny how these things kind of come together, isn't it? Just like obviously we've had kind of video, Skype and things like that and other things, but it didn't really feel like we were doing these in lockdown. We were doing these quizzes regularly and stuff like we do them every week. It'd be a bunch of different people, and I just thought, well, surely you can just, because I'd always thought, it'd be amazing to do a podcast, but I was just like, it'd be such a faff to kind of like have to have people to get to come to you or you go to them. It's like so costly and so let alone the equipment, not just the equipment you have to buy, but like traveling to someone or doing those things. And
sure.
So I was just like, well, idealistically, you'd have people across the table from you, you'd be talking. But when we're talking like this, it just kind of got normalized over that point. And I was just thinking, well, if you want to do it, you should just start doing it. Because, I mean, there have been some UK ones and some other little bits, but I did feel like, well, I kind of know a lot of people from like, especially my time in skateboarding and, connections to people who are making stuff nowadays.
Yeah.
And I just thought, I'm sure they'd be up for doing it, and I'm sure I could do it. I can do it from a music point of view. Like I can do incidental music for it. That's another outlet for that stuff. And
yeah.
So I just thought, well, why not really? And I just kind of started doing it, and it's grown from there. And it started off with being kind of like I wanted it to be about the skate creative and that kind of the creative aspects, a bit like your kind of what you do with yours. But,
sure, yeah.
But it's kind of morphed into being that as well, but also things like video reviews I do regular ones with Ben Powell, who used to work for Sidewalk Magazine, and Ryan Gray from the Skateboarders Companion.
Alan Glass, you mentioned earlier.
And Alan, my brother Seth.
Your brother Seth, yeah.
We usually do a Christmas special with those two.
Yeah.
But and then just guests as well. So I just thought, it was just too good a thing to not do, really. And it's like, it's hard, and it's like, everyone hates the sound of their own voice, really, and all that kind of stuff. At first, do it, and the hardest bit for me is doing the intro. Just like I have to do that so many times. Like recording the actual podcast with people is fine because you're talking and you're into it and you're doing that stuff. But yeah, as soon as I sit down with the microphone, it's just me and the microphone. I hate it.
Yeah, I'm the same.
And it's just usually pretty brief. But yeah, it's grown a lot, and it's starting to grow more. And
you've done, I saw almost 30 episodes or around there, like 28, 29 or something.
I think it's maybe 31, 32, but yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
But I've just been trying to just keep doing it, and it would be really lovely to do like one a week or whatever, but it's not kind of
it's hard.
viable with the rest of my life at the minute. So I try to do one every 2 weeks, but there are little breaks here and there, and it's like I do as much as I can, and because as you know, like doing a podcast is however long the recording is, then it's usually twice that to edit it, and then you've got to do everything else, and it's so it's a lot of work, but it's growing, and I kind of I want to keep doing it and keep it going, and hopefully have some interesting guests on. I've had really good feedback off people, and it's been really fun to do. And
so you've focused, of course, mainly at this point, at least, on the UK scene. So you've had most of your guests are from the UK. I saw that, if I'm not mistaken, the only American person was Josh Stewart.
Yep.
Until now, at least. So yeah, I was just wondering, do you think you'll branch out to people from other countries, like North America or France or wherever?
Yeah, for sure. I'd really like that. I suppose it's that starting the podcast and that kind of confidence thing, it was all people that I knew and I'm starting to, the one with you and Neil was the first one where I'd not met the people before. So So it's that confidence of just kind of trying to build something, and because I've had really, good feedback and interesting ththings from people from all over, and like the guy from the Mostly Skateboarding thing, he put up a thing from the Angie, didn't he?
Templeton Elliott, right? Yeah.
He got in contact and just said, I really like the video reviews. And so it's really interesting that, the people from different parts of the world do listen to it and stuff.
Yeah,
really good. So, I'd like to have more international people on it for sure. But it's, I suppose I just kind of wanted to build it up so it wasn't just like, because hopefully the people I've interviewed from the UK are people that are internationally known.
For sure.
So people like Dan McGee or Wainwright or, all those people.
John Rattray.
Yeah. And they're people who are known by the people. So it would kind of be a thing if, because if you get a request to be on a podcast, you just think, oh, well, who's been on it and what is, it's like, and those people were kind of, interesting people and stuff like that. So it would hopefully be a bit of a calling card to be like, oh, well, it would be something interesting to be on. But yeah, I definitely want to do that. And I just definitely want to have more people on, I felt that you've done really well with yours. It's had a lot of interesting people on internationally. Different stuff.
Well, yeah, thank you. And that's what I wanted to, because like you, I was very influenced by the Nine Club. Like I listened to it religiously when it started. And after a few years, I started listening to it a bit less. But I like their format with, they're actually in the same room and it makes for a very authentic and fun conversation. But I felt like, it's too bad. There's pretty much a lot of like chocolate girl guys and a lot of people in this industry in California, basically. And of course, it's branched out to many other people outside of that realm. But for the most part, it's been a lot of these kinds of people. And I felt like, well, I would find it interesting to have a podcast with people from all over Europe or all over the world, skateboarding is global at this point.
Exactly. I think there is that thing about the American scene. I think the Nine Club is kind of not the, epitome of that, but it is very,
California centric
and that kind of, even that kind of, well, talking to Josh Stewart was interesting about that. He talked a lot about the kind of that East Coast part of skateboarding and how that was kind of,
its own thing.
Its own thing and very different to the kind of California stuff. And obviously he's from Florida, but
but he's like a New Yorker at this point. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's interesting seeing, because, that was growing up as a skateboarder, you kind of, in Europe, you kind of have that kind of idealistic view of kind of California and that kind of stuff, especially like in the 80s, that was kind of like, oh, wow, go to these places or do those things. But it was interesting that other people in America were having that same feeling about it. Do you know what I mean? It's like that connection with stuff. And if it's snowing in New York or whatever, you're probably thinking about the kind of nice California sunshine as well. But yeah, so I do think the thing with podcasts is like, there's just so much room for stuff. I mean, someone could start a podcast tomorrow and have all the same people I had on and get totally different conversations out with them and totally different things. And so I think that's what's interesting about that kind of long format stuff, is that you can dig a bit deeper and things like the video review episodes I've done, it's like that's just happened organically, and it's really fun to do. And we can, fart about a bit and just have a couple of beers and have a laugh, really. And it's like, I'd always want it to be like, going down a bar and being with your mates, and just listening to someone else's conversation or something like that. That's kind of the ideal of that. And it's really, those two are great, but yeah.
So to kind of wrap it up with the podcast, I was wondering, like, who's on your bucket list of people you'd love to get? I have a few people that I'd love to listen to interviews from you.
Oh, okay.
Of course, there's some people that are, I think, hard to get, but I would love to hear an interview of Tom Penny. Like Jacob Harris would be amazing.
He's definitely on the list, for sure.
And there's a bunch of people like Jamie Platt, who skates for Polar.
Would
be a cool one.
That would be good. He'd be good, yeah.
You did an interview with me and Neil McDonald a few months back, and I'd love to hear a more in-depth interview of just Neil.
Well,
when his book comes out. Yeah,
definitely going to happen. Yeah, I'll definitely have him back on for that, because that's something that just in the last podcast we had out, he put up a little post about a thing we were talking about in the podcast in the last episode, me, Ben and Rye. But
okay.
Yeah, that's going to be probably a two-parter, I reckon, for that.
Definitely. Yeah. That's going to be a long one. Yeah,
that's for sure. Yeah.
I hope he does. Yeah, I'm looking forward to his book. It's going to be cool.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of other people I'd love to have on, I think Jamie Thomas would be one that I'd really like to do.
Yeah.
If possible, because I'd like to talk to him about, especially that first Zero video.
Have you ever crossed paths with him?
Yeah, I have actually. Well, actually, my brother used to work for him. He used to be his European team manager, my brother Seth.
Okay, I didn't know that.
So I have actually, I met him a few times. Yeah, he's a real good dude and real solid. And yeah, exactly how you'd think he'd be. He's pretty focused, but the guy's got memory on him as well. It's like
really okay.
I remember he came to Lloyd's in Bristol. There's the Lloyd's, the spot is the big.
Right.
They did like a Fallen demo there, I think. And my brother was doing the TM and all that, so he was like, "Oh, you should come over and just go and say hi and stuff." So I did. But Jamie Thomas was doing, it was a bit ago now, but he was doing like a live chat thing, and I was like, I said hi to him there. He's like, oh, hi Joel, I remember you did that nose wheelie at that demo, and I was like, shit, yes.
Yeah.
And like,
cool.
So he's got such a good memory for all those things, and considering like how many people that guy meets and all the things.
Yeah.
Imagine the demos that guy's done, you know what I mean? It's like so many and so much stuff. But so he'd be a good one, definitely. Jason Dill would be good as well.
Oh, yeah. That would be super cool.
That'd have to be, the stars might have to align for that one, but I don't know.
He's probably a hard man to track down, yeah.
Maybe, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I think I've met him a couple of times as well. He's always been a super sound, but yeah.
Wow, those would be amazing.
Those two would be good because they're kind of like key ones for me in my personal skateboarding.
Right, yeah, for sure.
Inspiration, but anybody else? I think I've got a few hopefully coming up that I've been in touch with people, which I'm really looking forward to doing. But yeah, I won't say which ones are because they
yeah.
Or it could not happen.
Sure, no, of course.
But yeah, iron's in the fire, definitely. So hopefully soon, yeah.
Okay. I kind of wrap up my interviews with this question from me, which is like, what's the most valuable lesson you feel you've learned from skating?
I suppose it really taught me a work ethic, I suppose, really. Because I didn't, like I said, I was really not very good at school or didn't gel well with that kind of academic aspect of that kind of stuff. And
sure.
It really taught me that, you can learn how to do something and improve at something in that way. And it's like, and the only way I really did that, like I said, was just going out by myself and just doing it really. And it's like, I think that has been a big lesson for me in a lot of ways about, I've applied that to so many other aspects of my life. Do you know what I mean? Like, you do have to do the work, and it's like, it's a funny one. It's like with skateboarding, it is, and the same principle applies to everything, I think, is, those times when I was out skating by myself or skating down a skate park loads.
Yeah.
That feels like the preparation for when you do go into the street and try and get a street trick, or, like with my music stuff, if I'm playing something or practicing something or doing something, it's like, you may be doing that for one day and it'd just be fun. And then you go to record something and it's like, oh, I can apply that or change that. And obviously the best things in skateboarding and in music actually for me are the bits where you have that disciplined learning is then applied to a kind of interpretive or improvisational aspect of another bit of it, basically. So you have all this bedrock of what you've learned. So in a skate context, it would be like, I've nosed around that block over there 100 times. So then when you're in a situation where you're on a trip somewhere, you've had all that practice to apply that to wherever you are. And that really kind of is the bedrock of all things like that. Music is the same, I mean, it's like you have that time of practicing your instruments, doing those things, then
you have to put in the work, yeah.
Yeah, and that makes it, not to make it sound like kind of like, oh, I've got to do the work kind of thing, but it is like kind of like, it is about that kind of growth really. And I think that's the thing that skateboarding taught me is like, in order to grow through, because like I said, I skated for a long time and kind of wasn't any good really, like I didn't really feel like I did very much or didn't really achieve very much or didn't really kind of like, oh, I really did something good today. And it was only after that point. But I did have all that time just riding around and getting comfortable really, I suppose. And that was that, I couldn't have done that without it. Do you know what I mean? I would have been a very different skateboarder in that way. So yeah, I think that's something, just that perseverance and that kind of
work ethic,
self-motivation really, I think. Because I think with everything you do, even if you're working for somebody else or you're doing anything, it all comes back in.
Doing the podcast.
Exactly, yeah. So that's all that kind of thing. So yeah, I think that's the main thing that I've taken from that. Like I said, that's been applied to every part of my life really. So yeah.
So let's wrap it up with the friends questions.
Cool.
So this very first one is from Helena Long.
Oh, cool, yeah.
Whom you had on your podcast a while back, a few months ago.
Yes. I just saw her do a gig with her band a few weeks ago. She was amazing.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, really good. Yeah, in Bristol.
That's right, yes. I forgot she plays music as well, yeah.
Yeah, she's a drummer. She's really good. Yeah, amazing.
So she said, you've had the chance to skate some famous spots over the years that are now gone. Which spots would you like to bring back if you could?
Ah, interesting one. I suppose it would be, was a classic Sheffield spot called the Walking Man, which was like a really small set of stairs and like it was like one of the only undercover spaces that we could skate on, like on a rainy day. If it was a Sunday or something like that, we'd go there. But that was like it was pretty small and everything. But I had some of my kind of first coverage there. There used to be some kind of blocks on these, like down some stairs, and I had a few sequences and stuff in there. And so that was one spot in Sheffield, definitely. Yeah, that was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of any kind of other ones internationally or anywhere else that I've been that are gone now.
The one we talked about earlier where you tried to ollie nose manual into.
Oh, yeah, that one. Yes, that one's gone.
I think it's gone because I haven't seen this spot in videos in a long time, so I assume it's gone. But
I mean, that was pretty tough, that one, because I was kind of like into a dual carriageway, kind of like a big road.
Yeah.
It was pretty sketchy.
Pretty hectic, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm bummed I didn't get that trick on it, but there we go. So maybe that one too, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right, let's do the next one. So this one is an audio one.
Oh, okay, cool.
Hi Quinton, it's Seth here. I just wanted to ask Joel what was the catalyst for his change in skating style from like drops, rails, big stairs and gaps into sort of like more manis and sort of like more ledge stuff too. And also, how close was he to getting on Blueprint?
So that was my brother Seth, right? Yeah.
Yes. So the first part, we kind of talked about it a bit, like your transition from basically being a zero kind of guy to being a more Jason Dill
I'd say it's that photosynthesis part, yeah, definitely. For the changeover, definitely.
Okay.
Regards to the Blueprint stuff, that is kind of a weird one because it was when I was kind of on zero. It was about 2000, 2001, I think. I had like a really... I was filming quite a bit and doing stuff like that, and I've been on Panic, of course, and like all those guys, especially like Mark Baines, who was a close friend of mine, still is obviously, but at the time I was skating loads with him and stuff like that, and he was on Blueprint, and good friends with McGee and stuff like that, and I did really well at a competition, like one of the last St Albans ones, I think I won, like it's the only competition I've ever won, but I think a few people saw it at that, and it was kind of talked about, like, there used to be this guy called Alvin who used to do the stuff for Panic when I used to ride for it, and he was kind of part of Blueprint, but became less so as the time went on. And he phoned me up and was like, oh, yeah, we think we'd want you to ride for Blueprint and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, okay, that would be great and stuff. And I was like, kind of thinking, well, I don't know why Alvin's phoning me up and like, why is Dan not phoning me up kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? Because like, Dan's a good friend of mine and he was Blueprint, you know what I mean? So I phoned Dan up and I was like, oh, what's this kind of, and he's kind of like, well, I don't know if it's going to happen or not. And we might have space on the team or whatever, but they weren't sure about it.
Okay.
So I don't know. It's reading between lines. I reckon they probably put it to a vote, and I didn't make the vote.
Oh, okay.
Which is fine. And it's like I said, they're all my friends or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think maybe people like, I don't know. I think maybe I talked to Baines a bit about it. And he kind of thought. I think he said at the time he was like, yeah, like Joel's really good and stuff, but I don't know if he fits with it and stuff. And so it's like
jealousy or
not jealousy, but more just kind of like I think I was so just like in that zero zone for such a long time, and Blueprint was like the opposite to that. So,
I see. Yeah.
Even though I think they all respected me as a skater, I don't think they really saw it as a thing about me being
They
the
thought
same
maybe
vibe.
you weren't the best fit because of the way you skated. And
But I mean, I think they did kind of branch out a little bit more, and they had people like Ben Grove on and stuff like that, who were a bit more kind of in that kind of vein of stuff, really. But I was already in Landscape then, so it never came up again. But it would have been nice in some ways, but at the same time, I kind of feel like I did hang out with those guys all the time and did really special things with that team, like go on trips with them and things like that. Which So even though I wasn't on the team, it was
still hanging around with all the
people, good camaraderie and stuff like that, and it's kind of maybe more special that it wasn't. I did change that relationship just being a fun one, really, rather than it being kind of something that I had to kind of had to do stuff on. But yeah. So close, but no cigar with that one. So yes.
Okay. Let's see. This next one is from Ryan Gray.
Oh, nice.
We mentioned him a bunch of times as well. So he said, Joel used to ride for Sumo Skate Shop in Sheffield, which was legendary in the 90s and early 2000s. Which 90s Sheffield local should have ridden for Sumo but didn't?
Oh, tough. Deep cuts from Ryan there. I think everybody that kind of was good there and kind of got hooked up, really.
Okay.
And there were people who kind of just even got like, discount and not flow really because it's a shop. But, I think there are people who came out afterwards who probably would have ridden for the shop if it had still been open and still been a place and stuff like that. Like, obviously Matlock, people like that, they would have fitted in perfectly with that. But obviously they were too young at the time and stuff like that. So I think everybody who deserved to ride for it actually rode for it. Because there was I think the team was pretty big, like 9 or 10 people. I think it was quite a lot. And even some people from outside of Sheffield rode for it, people from Manchester and some other people. So I reckon they got all the bases all covered there with that one. I don't think anybody missed out with that, really. But yeah.
You kind of answered, but he asked as a follow-up, he said, if Sumo was to reopen today, which present-day Sheffield local would you put on the team first?
Oh, Well, Matlock will be top of the list. Yeah, definitely. He's like my favourite skateboarder. He's amazing.
Is he the guy who just had a part on for Passport?
Passport. Yes.
Right. Yes. He's incredible.
Yeah, amazing.
What's his name? Matlock?
Matlock Bennett Jones. Yes.
Right.
Yeah, that's his name.
Yeah, his part was incredible. Yeah, I really enjoyed that one.
We discussed that one quite a lot on one of the podcasts I did with Seth and Alan. And
yeah.
Some of the spots he skates in that and shit, like some of the Sheffield skate spots, they're really crusty and like so gnarly. Yeah. Especially that steep rail that he does the lip slide down. It's like to do a lip slide down that is so tough. It's literally like that. It's mental.
Damn.
So yeah, he'd be top of the list for me, but he's top of most of my list at the minute, to be honest.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, let's do the next one.
If you could go back in time and change one of your pro board designs, which one would you change and why?
Who's that from?
That's your son, Logan.
Oh, is it? Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. You got him. That's cool. I didn't recognise his voice then. That's weird.
Is he the oldest or the youngest?
He's the oldest, yeah. He's my son, Logan.
The 17-year-old one.
A daughter, Coco's 13, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Interesting. Which one would I change? I think there's two. There's one that I had, my last one I think was like a bowling alley, which was kind of nice, but kind of like towards the end of Landscape, there's Foz did kind of less of the artwork stuff, and this guy called DJ Thatcher, I think that was his name, he did a lot of graphics. He did some really, really good stuff, amazing stuff. Mm-hmm. But there was like a kind of bowling alley one, which I liked and stuff, and it was kind of like, it was all like as if they fit together, or if there was like a neon kind of light series, but yeah.
Okay.
That one was good, but I maybe would have changed that a little bit. But and I had another one which was kind of a bit like the Joy Division, Unknown Pleasures.
Yeah, the waves
cover. Yeah, the waves, but it's kind of like the landscape symbol, and that was rad. But there was like an almost one. There was a girl one. There was a
Toy Machine.
Yeah, they all kind of came out at the same time, and I kind of and even though possibly that one was first, but I can't remember, but. It was kind of just like, I like it and it's cool, but
does it feel that special?
Well, it just felt a bit like kind of, really? I don't know. Because it's like, if I was from Manchester or something like that, then
well, yeah, there's also that, for sure.
So maybe it could have been a Human League one instead or something like that.
I
don't know. But yeah, maybe those two.
Okay.
Thanks for that, Logan, yeah.
So this next one is from Dan McGee, actually. We talked about this, but he said, ask him how his career path was changed by Neil Chester's decision to save £5 buying the cheapest plywood, causing him to transform from Jamie Thomas into Jason Dill.
McGee's obsessed with this, basically. So when I was in Sheffield, I was kind of going into the town centre one day, and I was on a bus, and I saw this handrail. This was kind of like my peak handrail point. It was probably 2000, something like that. Okay. And I saw this handrail over I was on a double-decker bus, so I was kind of like quite high up, and I was like, oh shit, there's that rail over there. Looks pretty big, but it's
skatable.
Looks doable. It's kind of like grass on the other side, so you can kind of bail it all right.
Sure.
So I actually went with Dan a bit later, and I think I don't know if I tried it that day when he was there. I'm not sure. Anyway, but the run out at the bottom, so it was like two rails that went down, so quite a thin set of stairs, but the rails were quite high. They were kind of like up to my chest, basically. So.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Pretty big. But the bottom, the run out of it was kind of like the path was thinner than the rails, basically. So if you just skated the rail, you would have gone into there was like an edging on the path, basically like a stone edging. You'd have gone to 50-50 on a curb at the bottom, basically. So I went there with Neil Chester, who filmed the sumo video and filmed for Blueprint and filmed loads of other really amazing UK videos. Mm-hmm. So I was just starting to try it, and I just thought, well, at the run out, I've got to basically have some wood there, because otherwise there's no landing, basically. And it really was just there weren't many rails you could skate very well then and stuff like that. So to find what you just had to make do with what you had, basically. And we basically had some other stuff we'd been using it to run out for somewhere else, but it was really thin wood.
Okay.
So I just kind of put it at the bottom, and I just thought, it's it'll be fine.
It'll work out. Yeah.
It'll work out. So I started to grind the rail, and then basically ground the whole thing and tried to land on this wood, and I hit the wood, and 3 of my wheels went through the wood.
Oh shit.
So it just stopped me dead, and kind of it was like a 15-stair rail that was that high to stop, basically. I just kind of went and rolled out, and I was I was so pissed off.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds horrible.
So it wasn't Neil's fault, really. It was my fault just as much, really. But
yeah.
But then I went back again with some better wood, and I basically ollied on, and I missed my ollie at the top, and it flipped me out over the rail, and I caught my legs on the thing, and I kind of span around it. It's on my Instagram. I'll give you the link for it.
Oh yeah, please. Yeah.
You can watch it. You can watch me eating shit on it. But yeah, so I went back, tried it again, and I took a hell of a... I really got lucky on that one. I was like, I could have really fucked myself up, but I managed to get away with it.
Wow.
And I think I went back to maybe try and do it for portraits, but I didn't really get very far with it. So
Okay.
it's still not done, and I think it's still there, but it's pretty horrible. So yeah.
Someone needs to go do it, yeah.
Well, maybe, like I say, I think it still needs to run out and all that kind of thing, so it would be tough to do anyway.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay, this next one is from Nick Jensen.
Oh, cool.
So he said, when you were filming for portraits, do you have an interesting story about Chris Massey, who we all dearly miss?
Oh, so many, yeah. It's just Chris was just such a good guy and such a wickedly dry sense of humor, and like what I always talk about is we went to Paris to go, and it's like it would have been a real struggle for everybody to get the time off. He was working at he was the manager of a Starbucks at the time while he was filming that video, so he was working full time and doing all that stuff as well. And,
wow.
But yeah, we went on this trip to Paris, and it was like the first time I met Soy, actually, the first time I met Benjamin de Bert.
Oh, yeah.
And amazing trip, but like first night we were skating, and he was fucking about, because he was a good skater as well, but he was fucking about and did a tray flip, and he fucking rolled his ankle so badly. Like, it totally just went like the size of a watermelon. So like the rest of this week, he was kind of hobbling about after us, like literally trying to, like, I think he had a crutch and stuff like that. It was that bad.
Wow.
So we went, there was like no filming of lines, nothing like that. We just had to do that stuff. And it was just because we'd always talk about, he would just like, sometimes he used to have like, just bad luck with things like that. It was funny, but yeah. And like the premiere was incredible as well. That was such a good night, but it also, like, he had real trouble with like the projector and stuff like that. It was really dark on the screen, and like I came down, I was like, oh, I saw him, and he was like, and his hands were bloody, and I was like, what's happened, Chris, to your hand? He was like, I've just been punching the wall because I'm so pissed off. So like he literally put his blood, sweat, and tears into that video.
Yeah,
and,
well,
like,
yeah.
But still such an amazing experience, and such a good guy, and I do miss him, and it's such a shame for this coming up that he's not here to be around for the
20-year anniversary.
all the love portraits is getting lately. So yeah, so big ups to Massey, yeah.
Okay, so this one's from Foss, from Mark Foster.
Oh, cool.
So he said, ask him if he remembers that night we were skating the weird quarter pipe on top of the board near his house in Sheffield, and one of our boards zoomed out and almost went into the road. But we saved it, but this car slammed its brakes and did a 180 slide in the middle of the street. That was pretty funny.
Yeah, I do remember that, yeah. Foz came to stay with me in Sheffield, and we kind of we both didn't drink then. Well, Foz still doesn't drink. I drink a little bit now, but we were both just, we'd go skating and do that. But there was a little kind of weird, there was a church which was down the road from my house, and it had these like really thin walls.
Okay.
But they were like a perfect transition, so they kind of like went up to vert, and they must have been about 4 foot high, but only like kind of maybe a foot and a half wide. So you could kind of drop in. I think Baines does like a drop in and then a 360 flip off this block and stuff like that. But yeah. But yeah, that was funny because like it was parked next to this main road in Sheffield, and like I remember his board going out and he'd nearly taken this guy out. But similar story on that was one of the funniest things I had in Glasgow, not with Foz, but on a landscape trip. We were up there. We were staying with Alex Irvine. It was me and Snowy and people. There's a spot in Glasgow which is like a big downhill with some steps sticking out. There's loads of people have had footage on it. I'm not sure if they're there anymore. But basically it's like these steps that looks quite kind of East Coasty, like SF kind of style vibe thing, even though it's in Glasgow.
Right.
But we were skating there one night, and the first night we got there, and basically I did I was trying to just do like a 5 on these stairs, and I did like a 5 and zipped out. My board went down the hill, went down to this crossroads where it was. This car came down, ran over my board, cool as a cucumber. The guy gets out of the car, picks my board up, opens his boot, puts it in the boot, drives off with it. Like he just like didn't even say anything, just like he just like drove away with it.
Wow, that's incredible.
I was just literally stood there like I was at the top of this hill, just like, all right, okay, just like didn't say anything, just put it in his boot, drove away. So like the next morning I had to go and get a whole new setup from the shop and stuff like that, and I had nothing. I was sitting down for the rest of the night that night. It was funny.
That's so random.
So somewhere in Glasgow there might be an old rusty landscape board which is
did it break because did he roll on it or? He
drove over it. I don't think it broke or anything like that. But yeah, he just got out of his car, killed his cucumber, just put it in his boot and just drove away.
That's funny.
So boards going. I had another board run over by a bus, which it totaled the whole setup. So it broke the trucks, the board, bearings, flat spot the wheels. It was completely flat.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, bus. It makes sense. Yeah.
So there we go.
Okay, let's see. I have another audio one here.
Okay, Joel, I remember when you used to skate a lot of big rails and big drops and big drop-ins and shit. You used to have this ritual that you called cancelling, where you used to mess around with the beanie on your head and like do a few kind of compulsive things when you were prepared to do something gnarly. Tell us about this madness.
That was Ben Powell, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
I think Ben really recognised this because I'd wear a kind of like a beanie, like a zero beanie, especially in the a sumo video.
Okay.
And I'd always kind of adjust it before a trick. I think I always used to do like funny little tics like that before doing tricks and stuff like that. And it's like they kind of creep in these kind of weird like
little rituals.
Yeah, and it's like it's such a short space of time. It's like you run up to something, you do something. It's like I remember seeing a video of Andrew Reynolds talking about that.
Yeah,
like
the madness. It was
yeah.
What's his name? Epically later, Patrick O'Dell.
Yes, yeah. So I think it was just part of that, really. But it's one of those things you don't really know you're doing at the time. So it's not a conscious thing. And then you kind of recognize it and you kind of think, shit. I mean, I'm still really bad. I talk to myself all the time, like to my breath all the time. So people look at me street and they're funny in the street. And I think, why are they looking at me funny? It's probably because you like talking to yourself and being a weirdo. But yeah, so I still think there's elements of that which have persisted in my life, definitely. Yeah. So
okay.
But I think that's probably skating by myself quite a lot as well. You know, you kind of don't really, you're in your own little world doing those things, so you don't notice until someone points them out to you. Yeah.
Okay, this one is from Mark Baines.
Oh, cool.
So he said, having been around so much before you moved away from Sheffield, I always thought it was mad how much you lived and breathed skateboarding. I remembered the talk of you going to do a pretty gnarly drop in everyday solo. Anyway, it seemed that you went from being obsessed with skateboarding to not really skating at all in a short space. Not all through choice, but through injury and life changes. I always wondered how that affected you and whether you missed the little things like going out filming, going on trips, and generally being around it so much as you were for quite a long period of time. Do you feel there might have been more to come if you could have got through that period of injury?
I think that's interesting thing. I think that's kind of been an ongoing thing for me, really, because it's like, I think I miss those things. Yeah, every day I miss them, still miss. I mean, like trips, going on trips is the top one for me, really. That's still something I wish I could do. And you know, still can do, but it's just having the time and things like that. And But it is, you know, like there is nothing like that feeling of just being out the whole day and
very carefree
in a foreign country is the best one usually, just to be out there and just, you know, some place you've never been before with a bunch of your friends in the van all day and you know, and it's like you have such a different, you know, it's all about where you're going next or what you're doing or the trick you're trying, or, you know, if you're not skating, there's somebody else skating. It's amazing. Yeah, so I do miss all those things, definitely, but like what I said earlier on, it just got to the point where it wasn't the same anymore, and it's like, and I still think if it had felt the same, I'd, you know, still felt the same way about it, but it really did change a lot in a weird way. And I think that's the thing which I'm very like that as a person. If I do something, I kind of do it 100%. Yeah. And then sometimes if I don't want to do something or something changes for me, then I kind of have a hard way of, it's hard for me to kind of do it begrudgingly. And if I do that, then I kind of feel like I'm not being that true or honest to that kind of part of myself, I suppose. It's, I think it's interesting as well because Mark's just had a baby recently as well. Which is, you know, amazing. And it's such an amazing thing to happen, and you know, I'm so happy for him. But, you know, to try, I suppose from his point of view, maybe you try to think about what it was like to try and be pro and have a baby at the same time. It's pretty tough. I mean, obviously he's kind of in his career, he's doing his New Balance stuff now, so he's not pro anymore. But at the same time, so that's really cool. But so it's a different point of his life. But those two things, trying to hold those together and trying to make both of them work was really tough. And like I say, my back injuries were not good at that point.
That didn't help for sure.
Totally not. And it's just, I mean, if you've ever had a bad back or whatever, but trying to skate with that, it's just the worst. It's so hard. But yeah, I feel like when he was saying is that would there have been more to come, there was definitely, I did feel like I could have maybe done another video part and maybe had because like I said, that stuff had a Horizons was okay, but just, you know, just wasn't, I needed to have way more, and it wasn't cutting it really from my point of view.
Okay.
So I think if it had been, you know, money's no object, that kind of thing, maybe, and I could have focused a bit more, then I think I probably could have done more. But at the same time, I'm happy with the stuff that I did, and it's kind of, it's cool to have those things. So yeah.
Sure, yeah, to look back on, and absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. It's all good. But I always say this as well. I always think everybody who skates should do a section, even if it's just on their own, you know.
Sure, just to keep as a memory and
just to keep as a memory, just have that thing of feeling that you're building something, you know, because that was the best thing about filming videos. And I filmed one for I had a part in one of Mark's videos that he made, one called Driving South, and we worked on it. We skated on that together, and we used to go out every day, and that was a real good experience. And that thing of working on a project, actually, that comes back to kind of the music stuff as well. That's the really rewarding bit of that for me, is that seeing that final product and, you know, and feeling like you've been part of something is really important.
Absolutely. Okay, let's do just one quick last one.
Yeah, cool.
Describe your most favourite movie scene and what makes it so special.
Did you recognize the voice?
I did recognize that. That's my wife, isn't it?
Yes.
It's my wife, Kerry, yeah. That's nice. My favourite movie scene.
Are you a big movie guy?
I do like films a lot, yeah, definitely, yeah. I think my favourite film is Blade Runner, the Ridley Scott film.
Yeah, the original one, yeah.
Yeah, my favourite scene from that, I think, is Rutger Hauer at the end of that, when he's kind of chasing Deckard through that building. There's like Rutger Hauer's performance in that is so good, and it's kind of like, it's crazy, like it's kind of stupid in a way and kind of silly, but it's totally believable. But there's a bit in the end where he's watching Deckard climb up the side of the building when he's kind of chasing him around.
Okay.
And he's kind of laughing at him a bit, like looking out this window. And he's like, "Where are you going?" and all this kind of stuff. And there's a bit where he's kind of like leans his head out the window and he lets the rain fall on his face. And he kind of like has this minute of doing that. And then he kind of remembers what he's doing and then starts to chase him again. And it's like, that feels like the way you just describe it then. It feels really contrived and really stupid and like kind of... But actually, in the film, in the context of the character, it really works. And it's like, there's a real, like, that character of the kind of this robot who's kind of half psychopath, but half, like, little child as well.
Yeah.
Is amazing. So I think that's my favourite little bit, but yeah.
Okay. I need to see that movie again. I haven't seen it in years, but...
It's old, and it's there's loads of different versions of it as well. There's, like, loads of different cuts and things, but yeah. But he's amazing in that. He's the best thing about that film, definitely.
Okay, this last one is from, so I'm going to butcher his name, I'm sorry, I think it's Vaughan Baker. Is that how you say his name?
Oh, Vaughan.
Vaughan
Baker, yes. So I used to ride for Blueprint and Unabomber, yeah.
Yes, who was on your podcast a while back as well. Yeah,
sure.
So he said, Joel, growing up in Sheffield, you were surrounded by a very strong skate community. Sumo was the local skate shop at the time. What effect do you think this had on the scene throughout those years, and what notable stories do you have from those times for us? And what role do you think local skate stores play within the UK scene today?
I think they're absolutely vital, to be honest. I mean, I think there's it's getting harder and harder to be an independent skate shop now. I mean, not that there's many chain skate shops or anything like that left either, but I think they're a massive part. And I think back then there was such a kind of late 90s to middle 2000s or whatever, there was such a really strong scene and a really strong connection between a lot of the independent shops like Slam, Mischief, Welcome in Leeds, and Sumo in Sheffield, and a bunch of different ones in Manchester over the years. And it's like, they'd all come together for all the comps, and we'd see all the same people, and it was like so many friends coming together, and like Focus in Scotland, and a bunch of different ones. And it's just, there was like this network basically, which I still think is there in a lot of ways, and still there, but back then I think it was quite a special time for that, really. And this Sumo in Sheffield was the linchpin, really, was the kind of like the thing which really pulled the scene together, I think, in Sheffield for a long time, and really started a lot of stuff. And like in the last video review show I did with Ben and Ryan, Ryan chose the Sumo video, which was interesting, but just that kind of thing was something that was really, a monumental thing, I think, in the British scene there were those shop videos. It's like we'd all be really stoked to see, whichever scene was coming out with all those stuff. And I think that's still relevant today, and there's still so many things and ways that those local shops support communities. Do really good grassroots things like raising money for skate parks.
Yeah.
But just for somewhere for the younger skaters to go and feel like they have a connection with something. And skate shops, I always feel like, some people find them intimidating sometimes, but...
If you're starting out, I guess,
maybe, totally. But if I compare that to like a guitar shop to go in, like guitar shops are the worst places to go ever. They're just horrible. Just like everyone's so competitive and like wants to like, thrash everybody off. And it's like I always felt skateboarding was so much more...
welcoming and
accepting and supportive in that way. So
yeah.
But so I think Sumo was everything really in that way, and it's Seb did some really, really, really good stuff, and everybody who worked there, and Henry and my brother and Martin and Rona, who started it as well, and loads of other people really contributed loads to that. Ben Weaver did a lot of the graphic stuff, who now works for Wire and Free Magazine.
Okay.
Yeah, and Sam, Sam Ashley did lots
yeah.
for them as well, and that was his starting out was with me, and he shot loads with me and Mark Baines in Sheffield for ages, which was really amazing for us, and again, he's kind of starting his career then, and just what he's gone out to. So it's supporting all that network, really. The shops do all of that. Like 50/50 in Bristol is another shining example of like the amount of stuff that Sid does for the local community and like the local skate stuff and all the collaborations that they do, and him and Danny have real massive history with the entire Bristol scene, really, and just so much stuff, and they're vital, really. So they need supporting, and I still think they are supported, definitely, but it can always be more. But it's so I think they're absolutely vital.
Well, let's wrap it up here. Thank you so much, Joel.
Amazing, lovely to talk to you again.
That's it for my conversation with Joel. Follow him on Instagram at Joel Curtis, JoelCurtis. Visit his website joelcurtismusic.com to check out some of his recent work. Follow the Skate Creative Podcast at the Skate Creative Podcast, and make sure to go listen to some of his episodes from the last 2 years on your favorite podcast platform. Lastly, if you haven't seen it already, I highly recommend you go watch the Portraits video by Chris Massey for Landscape Skateboards, which we talked about. You can find it on YouTube. Thank you for tuning in. See you soon for a new episode of Beyond Boards.